Alright peeps, welcome to another episode of Bustin' Timberborn Myths. We've got 5 juicy myths to uncover and a potential bug. But for now, let's dive into myth 1, which states that a fountain of joy wastes water. And I'm sure that's got something to do with that flavour text. It's not a waste if it makes you happy. Therefore, we're going to press the number 8 after enabling deb mode, of course, and get ourselves a 30-day drought on the crack. Now we have 3 depth sensors knocking about that will all illuminate when this gets to 0. And by the looks of things already, we are having a little bit more water in the back than in the front. So let's whip out a mad old speedy up it so we can see precisely how much more water is used if more water is used. Oh, and yes, the fountain of joy on the left I've got, so it's technically pissing water out the side of the map, you know? So we'll see if that makes any difference between those two, if there even is a difference between the 3 pools. Now, just in case that was too flashy and we've had to do a fancy fade, we are right at the end here, and it looks to be exactly the same as it was before. So let's do a real casual speed 99 until we get to 0.0. Then again, what's going to light up first? The 2 with fountain of joys in at the exact same time. And then by the looks of things, about a quarter of a day later, we get this laddie on. But there could have been some sort of discrepancy at the very beginning. So here we have all 3 depth sensors, most certainly at the exact same level. So if we press the number 8 now, we might see a different result. But instead of getting ridiculously flashy with the shadows, I'm just going to do a fancy fade until the lights are about to pop on. Oh, here we are, peeps. We're going to go down to speed 4 once we get past below 0.05. And then once we get below 0.02, we're going to go down to speed 3. And then once we get to 0.01, we're going to go down to speed 1. Aha! We're going to have to do an action replay because that bloody snuck up on us, but I'm sure they all switched on at the exact same time. Did our lights come on at the exact same time, editor MiGly? But since we've went ahead and got 2 different results, I think we need to do it a 3rd time, just to ensure that we didn't have any sort of shenanigans going on the first one. So these are all the same, they've freshly been topped up. It's time to dive into another 30-day drought, aka a fancy fade. And here we are, 0.6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when it gets to 1, we press the number 1 immediately. And now we wait. Which one of these pools dries up first? Way! That's the reverse order. What I thought was gonna bloody happen. We had the empty pool, then the pool where there's definitely no water being spilt anywhere, and then we had the pool where the water's being spilt out to the bloody side of the map. It looks like we are going again. But this time, I'm going to do it from 7.5 here. So let's press the number 8, and then hopefully that just means a bit less time me sitting here waiting for this number to go down to the bottom. Alright, we're at the other side of the fade once again. We're going to go down to speed 3 once we get to 2. And then we're going to go and spoon 1. I can't even speak. We're going to speed 1 when we get to 0.01. And what's going to occur here? Which lights are going to switch on first? All 3 at the same time. That is exactly what I was expecting. Right then. We need to repeat this until we get the same answer 3 times in a row. And you know what? To make it repeatable, when we get to 7.5, that's when we press the number 8. But we need to make sure these are all the same. Yes, number 8 now. Ooh, it's a bad tide this time, but still 30 days. So let's press speed 5 and catch us back when... Oh no! That's right, bad tide isn't going to work for us. You think I would have thought of that, wouldn't you? But nah. Now we just need to refill this and then pause the game the second it gets to 0.7. Oh, there we go, points. Oh, see, that's well off that. I think that's what happened the first time. We just had a bit of nonsense knocking about. Now, is that something I can consistently replicate there? So we're down at 8-0. We got a drought approaching at least. Yeah, look at that, 7977. Well, that's really good to know. Essentially, that means I want to start a drought. Let all of this water dry out. And that seems to be the only way we can actually get it reliable. Alright, we've got ourselves 3 empty pools. Now we go back. These are all going to ramp up, which oh, maybe that's the issue. Because when I just reset the water simulation, the current strength is probably all... Oh, what an absolute numpty. I pressed the wrong button. But as I was... Oh, why do I keep pressing the wrong effing button, man? Well, I suppose this gives me a good chance to have a little bit of a reset water simulation speed and see that, yes, these are all at 1. So that's what must be causing the issues. Anywho, before we fill these up and have to sit here for even longer, let's get these pools bloody emptied. And with empty pools comes a ramping up water seep. And then once we're now big chill at the same level, we're all chilling at 0.79 here. Nobody's off by anything. We're going up to speed 4. We'll watch the water level come down together. We're looking absolutely grand there. And then once again, once we get to 0.75, we're going to pause the game this time. Press the number 8 to make sure we don't get a bad tide. And then we can see all of these water seeps currently have a strength of 0. So it's straight in. We have the final, well, if they all turn off at the same time, the final fancy fade that we have to do. And you know what, peeps? I've been having myself a bit of a think, right? We could equate the seeps being at 1 as like when you have a sluice open and close, or a valve open and close midway through a temperate season. And that's how you can get some inconsistencies when it comes to fill rates and whatnots. Ah, MiGly, why did you yap? Well, editor MiGly, you may as well slow down that speed 30 and see if you have enough frames to see if they come on at the same time. But regardless, all I can say is I hope you're enjoying this totally professional Timberborn myth-busting episode that we're having here, and I'll catch you after yet another fancy fade. Alright, let's fade back. We're at 1. We're having a look now. If these all switch off at the exact same time, that's 3 times we've had it do that, and then I can be conclusive with the myth being busted. The fountains of joy divney use any water. Just like something else we learned in the last episode of myth busting, eh? And peeps, that was supposed to be the easy myth on this episode. So before we get to myth 2, I've got to welcome the sponsor of this episode, which is your brain. If yous have any ideas for myths that you want to see tested, let us know. Because without your brain sponsoring these episodes, it takes bloody ages to come up with all these myths. But without further ado, let's get into the second myth. This myth is all about contamination/irrigation barriers. The myth states that contamination barriers definitely block contamination infinitely downwards. Now, as you can see, thanks to us being on the folktales and having contamination barriers, our irrigation guns all the way down below deck to the very bottom of the map. And I can't be placing any more dirt around here. Let me show you. If we try and plop, say, a dot on there, we can't get any further. And I look, me V might not be perfect, but it will showcase just how far down these contamination barriers protect against contamination. Well, enough preamble, let's press the number 8 until we get a bit of a bad tide knocking about. Oh, there it is! Now, of course, it's not going to help with the bloody contamination that's spilling out of the edge, so ye be gone! Now, the main reason we done the ye be gone is we should be able to see that even though there's no contamination barrier right at the edge here, you don't actually need it. We can delete all of these contamination barriers as well as all of these contamination barriers along here. Because the only bit that we want to protect is the front, which you can see isn't contaminated, despite there being little pools of shite ready to evaporate. Now, I do have this air gapped, however, I've just filled this bit pool. So let's get one bit of bloody dot connecting these two together, and then you'll be able to see that it's all green. Even though, when we have ourselves a look at the top, it's fully contaminated. And you know what, let's just make sure, get the contamination sensor out, Are we fully contaminated? Yes, we are. But we've got plenty of irrigation all the way down to the bottom of the map. Now, if I, just accidentally delete just one of these, I suspect that contamination is going to creep down the V and all the way to the bottom of the map here. So that would be myth busted! Because if ye real casually set up your irrigation barriers, you do not need any worries about your bottom of the map bombs. Plant your tatties till your heart's content, beavers! Look at all of those tatties ready to be harvested by all of these fancy beavers round here. And that perfectly leads us on to Myth 3 on what episode here? So, we have 3 identical reservoirs. These valves here are closed until we manually lever it open. But these throttling valves along the side right here are all set to the 3 depth sensors. The depth sensors are set to close above 0.10, 0.50 and 0.90 respectively. And the reason we've got these 3 levels is because myth 3 is that keeping your river topped off, fully brimmed, uses more water than not having it topped off. So we've got topped off, half full, and the minimum amount of water required for irrigation. We are purely irrigating these fancy little zebra trees here. We've got impermeable floors underneath, so we're not getting any groundwater seepage. And I reckon it'll be a good idea to duplicate some of these depth sensors that we used in the first myth, so they'll switch on when this gets to 0, because that's what matters here, is how quickly does the reservoir empty. And now you can see we've got all 3 of our reservoirs at 2, 7, 8. Let's press pause, just in case it's a bad tide, get us on into a drought, and then dive straight in to what looks like is gonna be a fade, because these shadows down here are gonna get very, very flickery unless I sit and waffle on for about 3 minutes straight. And you don't want to be hearing that, do you? You want to know if the myth's fully busted or conformed, or plausible like the first one was before we busted it. Ooh, it's actually really difficult to tell who's winning and what's happening here, because it looks like that one's really far behind, but then this one will open and dump some water out, but this one won't do it for a little while. Although it does look like we'll have some differences, so this is going to get bloody interesting here in a moment. Anywho, we're supposed to be doing a fade. What are you doing jumping in the middle for, MiGly? Oh, we're starting to get close on these left 2, but strangely enough, we consistently have had a bit more water in this right reservoir than either of these 2 left 2s. Like I say, they do fluctuate of who's in front and who's... Whoa! When am I 30 days? Well, I built some fair dinkum reservoirs, didn't I? And unfortunately, I need to redo that entire bloody test and keep an eye on the day counter from now on. Although I have found an easier way to reset everything. Go into a drought first, then reset all of the water simulations. Then we can go ahead and press number 8, and we get ramping up sources. So there, peeps, I'm going to let these fill up. I'm going to somehow hope they all end up at the same bloody level here. Alright, so as it stands, we've got 280, 2.82 and 2.82. That means that these left 2 here have an advantage when we go into this 30-day drought. They've got a 0.20 advantage, so if this right-hand reservoir still outlasts the other 2, we know the most efficient way to keep your river irrigating. It's been 21 days in this drought. We're at 6.5 on this depth sensor, 7.9 on this one, and 9.0 on this one. Bearing in mind that bad lad had a 0.20 disadvantage on the right. Now, once we get down to just a couple of days left, I'm going to pause the game and press the number 8 until we get into another drought, and that is why the game is paused. 3 droughts in a row. Now let's get back up to speed 4, because I want to get this drought approaching gone just in case somehow this big bloody bad lad lights up first. 0.14, 0.15, you see what I mean? These 2, they start bloody flipping and flopping. Who's actually the more slow? There's a good chance that this bad lad, hang on, why aren't you letting water out? Ooh, it can't, because it's below 0.90. Well, that is quite curious. Now, it looks like our middle laddie's going to be the one. Oh, no, look. They're fairly close, but now the middle laddie's definitely got a bigger gap going on there. But the wee river's been spot on. And yeah, look. Depth sensor in the middle went off first. And I would say, margin of error, these two were pretty much the same. But we still got half a block on the boot, where we were only keeping the river at 0.10. And as you can see, plenty of irrigation, which is what this myth is all about. Well, it's not, but this is the use that I've came up for it. You just want to keep your river banks irrigated. You don't really care how much water's in the river. So which one lasts the longest? That's what these three bloody depth sensors are all about. They'll tell us whenever these middle pools dry up. There we go! Whoa, right! We're gonna have to speed that down and post edit a MiGly. But I believe it was right, middle, and then left. How bloody peculiar. Now I'm going to jump into a test here because we are at the exact same. So let's press the number 8 before anything occurs. Thankfully that was a drought because that could have been bloody terrible. But here we are. We're going to run it back. Now I will say, just casually observing, you're going to see the middle one blinks and then the left two blink. But they seem to blink the same amount of time. So when we're actually topping up the river, it looks like we are on for the same amount of time. Oh, all of these throttling valves have an 80% reaction speed as well. Forgot to say that earlier. You know, I'm not a professional myth buster. I'm just a bloody curious cupcake. But coming up to 10 days remaining, we've got 1.08 in there, 0.9 and 0.65. And yeah, I think we're looking at the exact same result. But I'm curious to slow down and not be in speed 4. For when these three, the actual bottom ones, switch on. Alright, so with a day and a bit remaining, let's press the number 8 until we get into another drought. 3-4 bad tides in a row! It is grand that I'm actually pausing these, like. We have got 2-2, 3-5, and then 2-0 in the middle here. And to be fair, from now, we should see pretty much the same rate of evaporation here, because it's not letting water out, as I was saying. Whereas this one seems to still be letting a little bit of water out. Because look, 0.11 and its target's 0.10. I think we're now finally at the point where this light is going to go off and bloody stay off. But how are we doing up here? 0.03, 0.02. Let's get doing. To speed 1, that one went off first, definitely. So, for your reservoir's sake, it's like 6 and 2 3s, but slightly better to be at 0.90 than 0.50. But definitely better to set your river at 0.10, purely for your reservoir's sake. Now, how about your irrigation's sake? When did these start coming on? 0.4, 0.2, ooh, these are lower. Which makes sense because we had the old reservoir back here. But this dried up first last time. But no, we've got the big one drying up first this time. And then, easily looking here, the middle one's going to dry up, and then the one on the right's going to dry up last. And I'm going to have to get to speed 5 to get that one to dry up. It took so long. But then it still leaves water in the reservoir, so technically, irrigation for a bit longer. Alright, I caught them just off the first refill off the bloody water seep. So I'm going straight into a pause, and then 8, so I don't end up with an accidental bad tide. So this should genuinely be as even as possible. But now you know the crack by now. I'm just going to be bopping along here and I'll catch you back whenever something fun happens. Now with a week remaining of this drought, we've got 8-5 at the right, 6-3 in the middle and 5-1 at the left. It's always strange how these two end up levelling out near the end, isn't it? But anywho, 1.3 days remaining, let's press number 8, get straight back into another drought and see which one bloody dries up first. That would be middle, then left. That was enough to spy with a naked eye. We are left with 0.05 and 0.05 over here. What about over here? 0.08. That's because that's how much is left over there. Now, let's get into speed 99. We can see that everything over can look. Left, middle, right. So I would say regarding the myth itself, in that keeping your water level topped up in your rivers uses more of your reservoir, would have to be confirmed. Because we've been very reliably having at least a smidge more water in here than the other two. But we may have to revisit this concept in a Timberborn science experiment, because that's raised more questions than when we began. But anywho, let's get ourselves back into a temperate season here. because we need to start spawning in some beavers. And unfortunately, turn on this bad lad right here. Now some of our beavers will become haulers, and they're gonna go all the way down here to experience the hauling cave. Plenty of light though, so it's all not so matter, you know. But above ground, we have to tackle the fourth myth, which is that these fancy mud baths save beavers from contamination. Now you may be standing here thinking to yourself, I don't think that's going to work, MiGly. And you'd be right. This has never been a myth for the folk tales. Ye's stay out of this bloody mud bath, laddies. But the iron teeth, on the other hand, they have big old mud baths. We got a beaver coming to scratch their back, but will they partake in a mud bath? Oh yeah, we can. The beavers are in the mud bath, and why do we not have bad water coming out here? Does this only occur during a bad tide? It looks like this is a bad tide exclusive thing. Well, let's get myself a bad tide starting and say, beavers, I hope you're bloody safe in that big old wild mud bath there. I mean, yous do look chill. Yous look like yous are having the time of your life. No concern whatsoever about the bad water floating up. And I've just spawned with a new batch of beavers, so we should have plenty of beavers coming and sitting in the baths. Oh, it looks like we may have a little bit of bad water coming in, but the baths are open. The beavers are looking happy, hopefully nice and healthy. Do we have any contaminated beavers? 76 contaminated beavers. I have a feeling it's these beavers here though. So maybe it would be a good idea to see if that 70... Oh, that number's rocketing up. We are over 100 infected beavers now. Oh, yeah, that's right. We'll get to that. But that shouldn't be affecting any beavers around here. But is that because the beavers are sitting in the mud baths? Or is it because they're showering in dirty bad water? I mean, the beavers are still coming and going, sitting about, having the time of their lives here in the mud bath. Oh, let's make sure we keep these full. But realistically, I have a feeling that the beavers are, in fact, getting contaminated from within these mud baths here. Although our beavers unwell hasn't went up. It hasn't went up at all. Still at 118, and there may genuinely be 118 beavers knocking about in here. I went a tad excessive, to say the very least. Like, there's like 4 beavers or something just in this one little plot of land. Oh, old mate is not very happy, are you? But that means if these beavers are getting contaminated at all, then I don't think they're getting contaminated. But if they're not, then how not? They're literally sitting in. Oh no, they don't go in there when the mud's not in there. So the mud must stick to their fur and act as like a protective coating, making sure the beavers definitely get contaminated. And you know what? I'm sick of having to manually fill that with dirt. Oh, that's the wrong way, Hoos. I'm going to get a large industrial pile and just fill it with bloody dirt. The haulers can deal with it. Oh yes, that's right. I need to make sure we keep up with the food and whatnot for our beavers. Otherwise they'll not be contaminated, they'll be bloody thirsty and dehydrating to death. But yeah, no, I'm just going to keep clicking until we get to about 400 beavers there or thereabouts. And then we'll see if we get any more than 115 contaminated beavers. We've got to be careful actually, we didn't want to end up with zombie beavers. Oh, not a problem, no zombie beavers, because they're all dead. Ooh! 1 contaminated beaver. How did you... Oh. Yeah, sorry mate. You're just a bit late at the dying party, aren't you? There we go. Nee contaminated beavers. And the beavers are living their best bloody life in the mud bath that is in the bad water. And you know what? I would have to say at this point that the myth of beavers don't get contaminated in mud baths is absolutely confirmed. And peeps, I'll level with you, that myth there I just made up off the top of me head because I only had 4 myths for this episode. But that is... I'm really bloody excited about that. You can put mud baths in bad water and your beavers are fine. I mean, providing you've got the ultimate beaver power source knocking around, of course. But you know, let us just real casually turn our attention to over here, which is a quick pickup for episode 1, because I was supposed to have all of these set to below 0%, which is impossible. You can't get below 0%, and I've also done the same with these sluices here, look, close below 0% contamination. So let's get back into a temperate season. So, ooh, look at that. That immediately activated because it was below 5%. But this isn't activating because it cannot get to below 0%. It's a scientific impossibility, man. What do you expect? And I imagine the very same goes for these. Yeah, look at that. That sluice has remained open, whereas this sluice is now closed. Let me override the floodgate here, and then you'll see that we're not going to let water out of here. We're going to start piling it up until it comes out of here, like it was earlier. So there we go. Amendment for last episode. Setting a contamination sensor or a sluice, which F sluices in 1.1, you will be absolutely missed. But that does, in fact, lock them out and make them utterly useless. I mean, look, it's not doing anything, peeps. It's just staying. Doesn't matter what the tide is. That is myth confirmed. And cheers to you leggings who let us know in the comments that I set me bloody myth up wrong. It's like bloody deja vu, this. But it's now time to get on to our 5th and final myth of the episode. And the way we do that is by triggering this lever, turning the hood off, so we get continuous bloody blasts to the schnoz. Look at that glory that is. All of those throttling valves in there turning on, water getting pressurized through this little bit system here, and spitting out of these fill valves. Now both of these fill valves are set to 1, and the myth is that if you've got a block of dirt above where your fill valve sensor is, it breaks it, and it will flood your entire world. So let's find out. Will it happen? It certainly will! Now, I will level with you, peeps. I already knew this was a thing because I encountered what I'm going to call this bug in my actual season of Timberborn. So I had to replace the one time I used fill valves with throttling valves. But now you can see the fill valve has stopped. If we build a bit of dirt there, the fill valve will open once again. Now, I do believe I can go ahead and say set this to 0.50 on both of these right here. And just to make it suspenseful, we're going to reset the water simulation. And for extra suspense, we're going to watch the water come all the way down and get pressurized. But will the throttling valve stop it? Or will it just continue to float upwards? There you go. So if you find yourself in this situation, you can very easily just make sure you are not at 10. 0.95 will work absolutely not a matter. But the second you get that fill valve to 1, if there's a block above it, you are asking for flooding. What I am curious of though, let's do a little bit of a water resimulation set, get it back to speed 3. If I do a bit of a platform jobby, and then say like a levee on top of that, does that do the same thing? And while we're here, and we know that this one's tickety-boo, hasn't had a single issue, get that up to 1. What if there's a platform above it? What would happen then? Oh, well, we know that the levee will break it. But will the overhang break? No. And it looks like, because they can see through it, let's test this theory right here, right now, by getting an impermeable floor on there. Now, unfortunately, to test these, I do have to keep resetting the water simulation. So I'm expecting this now to just constantly flood. because I can't see through that impermeable floor there. But we already know from when I deleted the levee that this one will stop. Look at that! And now, let's just reset the water simulation so there's no doubt whatsoever. Let's go back up to speed 30. We're going to delete this, and it's going to stop. Absolutely perfect. Oh, we got the water rushing down. Place your bets. Will the bulletin pool cause flooding? Will the shrubbery cause some bloody shrubbery? Let's find out. Oh, these are both classed as translucent or see-through items, or at least that's how I'm looking at it. But anywho, peeps, at this point, I'm sure you know exactly what's gonna happen once these fill valves get to one up here. So the only thing left to do is flick this switch. And see, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Muth-busting Timberborn Muths. And come back next time. And make sure you comment so I've got loads of ideas for future episodes.